Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Welcome to our expert panel, What Agentic Data Management Unlocks for Data Scientists, Analysts, and Leaders, brought to you by our friends at Matillion. I'm Brian Mink, co-founder and president of Data Science Connect, the world's largest data and AI ecosystem for enterprise leaders. Today, we're excited to welcome hundreds of attendees from around the world to explore what agentic data management really unlocks for data scientists, analysts, and business leaders alike. Too often, automation conversations stop at the engineering layer, but the real value emerges downstream, where teams need timely, trusted data to drive decisions, build models, and deliver insight. In this session, the Matillion team will show how an agentic system like Maia takes on repetitive data tasks autonomously, freeing up time for high-impact work. We'll walk through how this approach reduces backlog, accelerates analysis, and builds organizational confidence in the data behind ML pipelines, and executive dashboards. With real-world examples, we'll highlight how agentic workflows don't just optimize engineering, they strengthen the entire data value chain. We're honored to hear from a distinguished panel of experts today. Liam Morrison, VP of Field Engineering at Matillion, David Lipowitz, Senior Director of Field Engineering at Matillion, and Diana Pilzer, Senior Technical Account Manager at Matillion. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. To make this feel a little more in person, we suggest you add a photo to your profile and include your bio, LinkedIn profile, and other information you want your fellow attendees to see. Next, please take advantage of the Q&A and chat features in the right sidebar. We'll be addressing your questions throughout the webinar, so be sure to upvote the questions you'd like the panel to address. If you're wondering where your organization stands compared to others on your AI journey, check out the poll question in the right sidebar. And finally, to learn more about how to leverage agentic data management, check out the calls to action below throughout the webinar from our partners at Matillion. Now, without further ado, I'm excited to welcome our speakers to the stage.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liam Morrison. Thank you for the time here. Looking forward to an interactive session today. Yeah, also just adding to the kind of housekeeping, definitely want to keep it interactive. There's a very active chat, Q&A. Feel free to ask questions. The three of us are here to kind of make sure you get value out of this session today. So I guess let's pull up the slides. And also, we intend to spend as much of time out of slides as possible. The goal here is to get hands-on, get technical, and show you what Maia and Matillion can do. So with that said, next slide. Just want to give some further introduction to the team. Obviously, you know our names, you know our roles. I joined Matillion 2 months ago. Prior to joining Matillion, I spent 18 months leading field engineering for Pinecone. So we'll be talking about unstructured data and how that fits into this world. Prior to that, I led AI services for different parts of AWS. So moving to Dave Lipowitz.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Liam, and really happy to be here. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. I lead our North American field engineering team. So that's mostly just a team of technical experts who are helping customers really get value out of our product and platform. Before that, I spent the better part of 20 years as a database administrator and architect and developer. So yeah, it's been really fun being at Matillion for these last 7.5 years and seeing how the industry has grown and evolved over that time. So yeah, I'll pass it over to you, Diana.
Hi. Yep. Thank you. Like I said, or Liam said, Diana Pilzer, Senior Technical Account Manager at Matillion. I'm also semi-new to working at Matillion. Started a few months ago, but not new to Matillion as a product. So before this role, I was a data engineer and actually a customer of Matillion. So I know the title of this is not just for data engineers, but I do happen to not very long ago have been a data engineer myself. So I'll likely be talking a lot about that side of things. But excited to be here. Thank you.
Good segue into kind of the meat of where we're going with this. So I guess next slide. So with that, and one of the things that leading different field engineering teams for SaaS platforms, I was the role of the not data engineer. So I will be the counterpart to Diana's data engineer. When I was at my previous companies, one thing I would do is try to get insights from our data, which usually involved scheduling time with or opening tickets with our data team. And one of the things that became very hard is everybody is looking for that data person's time. So it becomes very much not an intentional bottleneck, but a bottleneck. So the kind of problem definition I want to make sure the room agrees is that data teams are being crushed is probably a bit bold of a statement, but they are being overconsumed because of this data first approach. Everything is heading towards insights and getting data. Every part of every company seems to be wanting access to insights derived from data. And the reality is sometimes that takes working with the data, doing different types of kind of analysis, and it becomes challenging. So there's data engineering skills, resource shortage. Obviously, there's a drive to integrate AI into data, which is where you'll see anything from Cloud Code and the different coding assistants out there are doing some type of work, but they're focused more on code generation than data transformation. Exploiting data sources. Part of my previous role was helping those data sources to explode, but the amount of data and the unstructured data, I think Gartner had a stat that 90% of an organization's data is locked in unstructured data sources. With the rise of generative AI, all of these data sources are now becoming valid sources for data that you can consume. So the most common one over the last 2 years has been meeting assistants. Every single meeting I've been on in the last 18 months has had at least one, sometimes two, sometimes up to 4 different meeting assistants. All of that is getting data from this unstructured data source, which is a gong caller meeting, and pulling it into a data source. The demands for this data are growing and growing and growing. Anything from personalization, obviously being key, retrieval augmented generation, the idea of like getting insights out of this raft of unstructured data is very interesting, but it's hard to do with the current teams we have. And then the idea is to use all of this data to drive revenue growth, but also hopefully not triple the size of the data engineering teams. So that kind of highlights the challenge we're in. And I guess, Diana, Dave, anything to add to these challenges? Is this what you saw in your worlds?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. As the data engineer, I remember we had a ticketing system, and during stand up every day, we would go through the tickets and say, what's the status on everything, everyone. Upper management would check on them, and all the time, the status was blocked, and the blocker was me, and that feels awful. So I really, really would love any type of solution to just prevent me from being the blocker. And honestly, I felt like I was fighting for my life or fighting for my job at least, ending up having to work additional, put in additional efforts that I didn't have time for in order to just be sure people got more context to the blockers rather than it just being me. Um, so yeah, I totally agree with everything you just talked about. At least in my experience, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and the I guess the exact story, I'll tell the counterpart to your story as far as like the work I was doing in my previous role is I was trying to analyze when a customer is successful. So think of a platform that has tens and tens and tens of thousands of signups in a given year, hundreds of thousands of signups that could be spending anywhere from like a couple dollars or up to $50 a month to a lot of money. And in a SaaS-based platform, understanding when someone is successful or struggling is a data science problem. It takes looking at the data, is using it 5 out of 7 days of a given week successful? Or is it using it every day for some part of the day. So I was working with, again, to your point, I would open a ticket or work with our data science team, which was essentially two very, very smart people. And I'd say, here's what I'm looking for. And they'd work with me as a data leader and generate a report. That might take 2 or 3 days to generate the report, not because the report took 2 or 3 days, because they had all other types of reports for all of the company they were generating. And then they get me the report and I'd look and I'd be like, oh man, I forgot about holiday weekends. That throws everything into a loop. Like now all of a sudden what I thought was successful, Thanksgiving hit and all of these customers showed up as unhealthy and they're not unhealthy. That whole thing became oh, I need this changed. And then it was like another 3 days would transpire. So it was a wonderful process when like the idea we had or working with these, like, what about if we do, aggregating 5 to 7 days, all the different tips and tricks that you do from a data engineering perspective, you don't know which ones you need to deploy. And it became this extremely iterative process where we finally got to the report I was looking for, but it actually took the better part of 90 days, which was a challenge. So I guess that's a good segue into the next slide for what we're introducing here and what we want to spend the bulk of this session is actually in the weeds showing you this. But this is the kind of human scale data engineering today, which is doing what it's been doing for the entirety of data engineering's existence, which is very smart people running reports and getting data transformed smartly into the right systems. But what we're seeing now is this kind of concept of machine scale data engineering, which is where all of these data sources, and then people like myself who do not have the data engineering expertise, but rely heavily on very, very smart people like Diana to do that. We have the right ideas, we just don't have a way to translate that into actual insights and work. And you might ask, what is the small logo you see that's opening that bottleneck? That you see on all of our screens and whatnot, that is Maia. So Maia is something that we launched in June, which is our team of virtual data engineers. And Dave will go very deep into what this is, but the idea is to enable all data engineers and data leaders the ability to directly engage with their data sources, create pipelines, build and transform data without necessarily having to be entirely all data engineers. It also allows you, to Diana's point of like working more and more. Again, these are obviously agentic data. It's an agentic system, so these do not clock out at 5 p.m. They can run, they can work when you're not working. That is a lot of the goal of what we're seeking to do here. So Dave, I think it's good to toss it to you on anything to add on Maia with you experiencing the launch of it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. And I think that the point that I want to make is there's two ways to expand that bottleneck, right? It's not just by allowing data engineers to be more productive and to handle more backlog. It's also by giving data analysts and data scientists an automated tool, an agentic AI that allows them to self-serve on their data engineering needs. So, Liam, to your example, where you were a consumer trying to get at a data source and trying to build out the logic that you needed to answer a very important business question. When is a customer successful? If you could have self-served there without having to collaborate with an already bottlenecked data engineer, then you're answering important business questions without having to take the data engineer away from whatever strategic business initiatives they happen to be working on.
Yeah, I believe I could have saved 89 days of effort by having access to something like this. That is at least my hope and belief. So let's talk about what an AI data team does for companies right now. So what we see currently is 3 main areas or value drivers that people are using Maia for. And Dave's going to go through these in detail. We're actually going to show examples and how some customers have done this, and Dave will actually show live the code for doing some of this. Stack consolidation, which is there's a lot of different data tools out there. A lot of different companies have, either through acquisition or just like different business units, ended up with like essentially just sprawl of data options. And the goal is they want to kind of bring everything into a modern data pipeline. That's something that, as Dave will show, Maia can actually understand and model. We have customers doing this. Legacy placing, like the effort of kind of taking each pipeline one by one, analyzing it, building it in the new world. It's actually automated, and you can validate it and essentially run. So we'll go through that. Staff augmentation, that's exactly what we've been talking about for the last 5-10 minutes, which is giving that data engineer, we're not replacing him, but we're giving the people who need resources from that data team ability to do it themselves. That way, that data engineer is freed up to do just the really hard stuff. Like I would define the work I was doing is not terribly hard. It was in the grand scheme of things, I would call it undifferentiated heavy lifting. Whereas some of the things this team was solving were truly interesting data science challenges. Mine was probably boring, Tim, if I had to ask. And then roadmap acceleration is the ability to kind of get to that backlog. And now that you have things that were formerly heavy lifting that you had to do, now you can actually unleash this virtual data team on new challenges, on things that you can iterate faster. The idea is to go from idea to like built pipeline in minutes, not hours, not days. So with that, I do have one customer example, which we just put up on LinkedIn earlier this week, which is Merck, who had this exact problem, which was a combination of slow pipeline building time. So it's taking up to about 10 hours per pipeline to build. They're able to cut that development time down to 1 hour. And that's the kind of concept of staff augmentation and building quicker. And then finally, they had legacy platforms, and they were able to migrate 3,000 legacy pipelines into Maia, into the data productivity cloud, which we'll talk about in a sec, very, very quickly. So with that, it's best to get hands-on as quick as possible. So
let's do it.
Over to you, Dave.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna just switch over now to what we call the data productivity cloud. This is Matillion's SaaS-based data integration platform, and we like to call it an intelligent data integration platform for reasons I think that are going to become super obvious in just a minute. But just to orient you to what you see on your screen here.
1 sec before you get going. It looks like I thought the poll went live right when Brian was talking at the beginning, but we did put a poll up. Just one, we want to get a tone from the room really quickly before we jump in this demo. I thought the poll was in the side. So if people could take a second, just answer that, we'd love to use this to kind of decide what we focus on when it comes to the demo Dave's about to do.
Sure. Yeah. Great shout. And curious to see the results there. As I was saying, this is the data productivity cloud, and you can see I'm sort of in a project here, which has all sorts of things like cloud credentials and shared secrets, things like that you need to do your data integration work. I'm in a branch here that I created just for this webinar, and the data that we're going to work with is purely synthetic. I made it up as if I were presenting this demo to a data scientist at a very large bank, right? And so one of the things,
even more so, Maia made it up.
Well, that is a really good point. Yeah, we used Maia to synthesize this data based on a couple of contextual prompts. So I told Maia that this was data that I wanted data for a very large national bank, that I was working with a data scientist named Alex, who was focused on cash flow estimation, right? And so just to get started, I'm going to click on this button here. And so this will look very familiar to people who've been using large language model chat interfaces. But the first thing I'm going to do is just say to Maia, hello. And so we'll let Maia take it from there. So this is going to kick off a session with Maia, and you can see that the first thing Maia is doing is sharing a couple of thoughts. It knows that my name is Alex, because what I've done is I've built that into the context of this demo, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But since this is our first introduction to Maia, Maia is just giving us a hello and saying a couple of things that it can do for us while we're interacting with it. So you can see here, it's given us a couple of canned responses. I don't want to say canned as in non-dynamic, but like it is giving us some options of things to do. And so the first thing, we could click on one of these, but what I'm going to do is, can you give me some suggestions on data or on analyses I could do with the data specified in, and now I'm going to use at notation. So this is, we have a file out here called the data landscape file. And so I want Maia to reference that file. So I'm asking, Maia, can you give some suggestions on analyses we can do with the data in this data landscape file? So we're going to kick that off, and Maia's going to think about it for a minute, and you can sort of see some of that thought process here behind the scenes. So it knows that there's some banking data, because we work for a very large bank. There's customer transactions, account balances, loan payments. Maia is aware of all of that information because of, and I'm going to open up our interface here just so you can see this virtual file browser. But this data landscape file sort of, you can see in this split view, and I think I'll just switch it over to the preview mode here, that we've told Maia about some of the data that we have available. So this bank, customer transactions, account balances, and loan payments. And so it's aware that it has those data sources to work from. Again, the importance of context is it's just vital for working with large language models, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But it's given us some ideas on things that we could do. So inflow forecasting, outflow prediction, cash flow optimization, customer segmentation, and it's made all of these suggestions. I'm just going to take one of these and say, I'd like to look at the interest opportunity cost. So build a pipeline to create a data mart that that illustrates interest opportunity cost. So I'm going to close this data landscape file just so we can see better what Maia's up to. And so now Maia is really digging into its thought process here. It knows, hey, we probably want to compare checking and savings balances, and go through how we want to break this problem down. And so let's see. So now it's going to build a pipeline, and you can see it's created a to-do list here. So this is, it's going to create an orchestration job here, and orchestration in the Data Productivity Cloud is basically anything outside of the data productivity cloud. So it's creating, right now you can see it's creating a table inside of Snowflake is our target environment. By the way, we also support other targets such as Databricks and Redshift. But it's creating this account balances staging table. It's going to go out and load this file from S3 that it has figured out is in this S3 bucket, and it's going to go through and start building out build out the data pipeline that we need to answer the question that we prompted it with. So it wants to create this cash flow forecasting balances file, and it's actually, so this is interesting. It's changed its mind. It said, hey, I actually already found 3 tables that have this data. So it started off trying to load the data itself, and now realized that this data was already loaded into Snowflake. So it's asking for permission to delete this file. I'm going to say, go ahead. And so that's part of that interactive authorization that we're giving to Maia is, it's a security control, right? So it is, it's never going to go off and do things without our permission unless we tell it to do so. So now what it's realized is that it has this account balances table, and it wants permission to sample this data. And like all good data engineers, it does better with access to the data. So I gave it that permission. While it's going out and building this pipeline, I want to just sort of talk a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes here. So when I asked it to do, to do that forecast, that is the natural language business prompt that I've given it, and it's taken Maia has taken that natural language business prompt, and what it's doing behind the scenes is creating what we call data pipeline language. It's this YAML format that's super easy for humans to interpret, but also it's very easy for large language models to interact with. And so it's building out that human readable data pipeline language. And what the Data Productivity Cloud does is render this YAML into this visual data pipeline. And so that has a lot of advantages. One, it is a known, there's a narrower problem space, I guess is the way I would put that. So it can select from the components that we have in our components palette, and it'll use those and configure them sort of as a defense against unwieldy code that a Claude code might generate. It's also very inspectable by humans, and so if it's important to keep a human in the loop, and it is, to make sure that your agentic AI is behaving correctly and can be steered, you need that those outputs created in a way that's going to be easily inspectable. And so so that's sort of this loop that when you're interacting with Maia, it's generating these YAML files behind the scenes and rendering those into visual pipelines. So just to give you that sense of what's going on. Yes, go ahead.
Dave, we got a question that's probably relevant to exactly where you are, which is, are these YAML files available from Matillion/Maia so they can be put into something like Git for version control?
Oh, well, that's a very timely question. So everything that happens inside of the Data Productivity Cloud is backed up by Git, and so you can see here, this is the pipeline that it's built out here on the screen. But I can go now and compare the changes that have happened using a Git diff here, for example. So the diff here is sort of drastic, right? Because there was no file, and now there's a file here that has been generated by Maia that has all of this information in it. But yes, we can certainly commit that change now. We can push it up to the remote repository, and it integrates very nicely with CI/CD patterns. So we use GitHub, but you could use GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and all of the GitHub actions or the equivalent for whichever Git provider you're using. All of those can be used to promote this code now into your QA environment, and from there into production if QA looks good. So so yeah, that's a great question, and it was a long way of saying yes. Everything we do is within a Git framework here. Good question. Thank you for that, and yeah, feel free to keep those kinds of questions coming. So it's asked if it can execute this pipeline, and I told it that was fine. But you can see here, each of these components has properties that Maia has gone off and configured. So the first thing it's doing is reading data out of the account balances table, and we can sort of sample that data here at this particular point in time, or a point in the pipeline, and you can see the raw data as it is at this stage. Then we've gone and we've added some calculations. So the numeric balance, the balance, the rate, the annual interest earned, all of these are different calculations that Maia has gone in and added. And you can actually use Maia to generate an expression. If you wanted to modify this and you said, hey, I want to give me a calculation on how much revenue we've lost because we didn't have our funds in savings, and we had them in checking instead. So yeah, you could give it that natural language prompt here, and it would generate that calculation. And so just to step back for a minute on what's going on here. So like data analysts, in my experience, are the ones who often understand the business rules the best, because they work with that data day in, day out. They're the ones who are actually doing, they're the ones who are in a way, in a sense, an agent of that business, working through what needs to happen for that business to be effective and successful. On the other hand, business analysts aren't always Python coders or necessarily adept at building out their data pipelines. And so what Maia does here is sort of democratize data engineering, and that human augmentation of giving data analysts the ability to do this data engineering work is what's allowing them to participate now. And we see this with our customers all the time, is that these data analysts are able to participate in data engineering activities where before they really couldn't. So what does that do? That allows them to self-serve, that allows data engineers to focus on the company's strategic roadmap rather than being pulled away from that to assist data analysts in their particular day-to-day challenges. Data scientists can, do the same thing, often very skilled in Python and in, modern modeling techniques and tools. They can't do that work without data. And so this allows them to focus more time on that high value and strategic modeling activity where before they still, so much of their time was going into data prep and similar. So the last thing I'll say is that, for skilled data engineers, I can kick off multiple Maia sessions. And so, for example, if I were a data engineer and I wanted to work on multiple things simultaneously. In this session, I could say, build me a star schema based on the data available in, I still didn't get it right, available.
I've found you can spell things wrong, and Maya also usually knows what you're saying.
I know. So like Maia wouldn't care about that typo. I care because, yeah, that's how my DNA works. But yeah, like Maia would definitely understand what I was asking even if I had that typo in there. But if I were to ask it, hey, build me the star schema based on the data available in the data landscape file, it will go off and do that while simultaneously I'm working on some other pipeline problem. Or let's say that that I'm a data analyst and I was told to go build a star schema. I could say something like, explain to me the benefits of a star schema. Like, so Maia is underpinned by, I believe that the model is Claude Sonnet 4.5. And that model has been trained on everything data engineering. It has probably a PhD in everything on Earth. And so if I were a business analyst and I needed to understand a concept, all of that is really at my fingertips. And so you can see how a data engineer might work on many things in parallel and accelerate the amount of strategic work that they're getting done.
And that leads to another interesting point, which is, again, the kind of, should I use Claude for something like this, or should I use something fit for purpose that has all the different controls? I mean, also, Maia uses a host of models. Claude, obviously, Claude Sonnet 4.5 is definitely a key one. That's one of the nice things about something like Maia, which is the ability to keep up to speed with the latest models as they're launched. I believe we were able to get Claude, about the most latest Anthropic model, in within literally a number of days from it actually launching publicly. So the idea is to keep up to speed, and as the models improve, obviously the foundational capabilities of DPC give those models more legs each time. So,
and on top of that, it's all here instead of having to go to another browser or another tab, pasting back and forth. It's all in one spot.
100%. I've often thought of Matillion's offering as sort of that IDE, that integrated development environment for a data engineer. What Maia does is democratize that so that business analysts and data scientists can participate in that data engineering. But Liam, you raised an interesting question, which is, why not just use Claude Code for this sort of thing? And I have been having a good time on the weekends vibe coding different projects and things, and that's actually been super gratifying. I think the challenge, though, is that as a business analyst, if you're doing this in the workplace and it's creating code that you don't that you can't read or you don't understand, I think that's very problematic. Because you're sort of just trusting what the large language model is generating, whereas in Data Productivity Cloud, and because of the graphical interface, you can easily inspect that. On top of that, Maia sits on top of the Data Productivity Cloud, which is not just a data engineering tool; it's a platform that has governance built into it, as we saw with the Git integration. It has near unlimited scalability baked into it because of the containerized nature of the data layer that we use. It has logging built into it. It has failover built into it. And so if you're vibe coding Python, you don't necessarily have the execution environment that you need and that really large enterprises need to what's the word? securely and safely and reliably deliver the data assets that that business needs on the day-to-day to fulfill its mission. So so I did want to point that out. There's a number. Maia has. It's not just one data engineering agent. There's a number of different agents, all that are able to leverage this platform. And just to talk a little bit more about that, you can sort of see in the architecture of the data productivity cloud itself, there's these, the data analyst agent can tell you different things about the profile of your data. The data engineer is going to be able to build out pipelines. Data ops is going to be able to promote your code, automatically push it up to the remote repo, for example, automatically enter Git commit messages, for example. Operations can do all sorts of things like looking for root cause analysis, issues that it would, diagnosing issues that we're seeing. So so yeah, I think that's sort of the overall point here, is that this agentic AI is democratizing data engineering in a way that makes it accessible, but also accelerates data engineering performance as well. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, as promised, is context files, right? So we have a number of different files in here that are going to enforce different rules. So let's say I had a number of pipeline standards. I want to make sure that every table I create is prefixed in the same way as specified in this data landscape file. So in this case, because we're a very large bank, all of our files are prefixed with BNK. In pipeline standards, we can also say, when we create a staging table, use the STG suffix. Always use, when we're connecting to relational databases, use components in this priority. So there's a number of different components that Data Productivity Cloud has available to it. And we would use, in this case, the SQL Server specific component. If that didn't meet our needs, we would use the generic database query component, and then later on this JDBC query or load component. So I think the point here is that what this does is that's going to govern Maia's behavior. So even if a data analyst is doing data engineering work, they're still going to be doing that work within the context of the business rules that we want everything that Maia does to follow, those standards. So so I think that's just absolutely crucial, is that this be governed. It's not just do anything that that comes to mind, follow these particular standards. And so not only are we bringing data analysts into the data engineering project, but we're also doing that in a way where it's governed and secure. And that's, again, one of the benefits of the platform.
Also, just training data engineers, like a new data engineer
100%.
on company, yeah, the way things are done for anyone, and storing it here in one spot, because I know you can write a file, put it in Google Drive or something, and then is anyone going to look at it ever again? Maybe.
In my experience, not always. And so that's such a great point, Diana. So yeah, it's a way of not just letting data analysts follow the standards, but it's a way of bringing up, bringing on board new data engineers so that they're doing things according to the standards that the company follows.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of interesting questions I wanted to point out, depending on which ones we want to take live, and we're getting quick on time, but we will want also any questions that don't get answered here, we'd love to answer. So feel free to drop us a line for a follow-up. But the what data infrastructure needs to be built to use the data agent and what's required for its integration with a company with very complex data warehousing structure, as quick as we can get that answer. But I think just a quick high level what's needed for this is one of the questions.
Yes. So really, all that's required is a Snowflake connection or a connection to the target of your choice, Databricks and or Redshift. And then you need, what most of our customers end up doing is spinning up their own agent, which is a container that runs inside of one of the containerization services on AWS or Azure. You can spin up that agent inside of that container, and that's what manages the actual connectivity. So the agent itself is running inside of your network, inside of your VPC, for example, in AWS or VNet in Azure, and because of that, it has connectivity to all of the resources that you need. The control plane, which is what you see here, right? This designer, that interface is a hosted control plane, and so that agent running inside of the customer's VPC is reaching out to the control plane, and where everything is managed as you would expect with a SaaS platform. We have role-based access control. We have the ability to segment different projects, and so that's the infrastructure that's there. As far as like the very complex data warehousing structure goes, I mean, that's always a challenge. I will say Maia is imminently capable of understanding those structures and can work with incredibly complex patterns.
And two segues. One, which I think is interesting, which is the does Maia Maia DPC provide transparency to the underlying code, auditing, or customization? So I think that's kind of the key to our story is governance, transparency, and auditability. So I guess that was the question: is meant to abstract it away, or does it provide transparency? Is the question.
I think the answer is transparency, and we also have audit logs and all sorts of logging baked into the platform itself. So those are available as well.
And then the last one, which I can take, which is if you start using Maia or the sample data landscape files there to get you started, there's actually one of the interesting things is Maia can also generate those files as well as so it's not just like a library of samples. You can use Maia in an effort to actually help you build the context files to use Maia. I know it sounds a little circular.
It does, but it's so powerful because one of the things that Maia is capable of, and I'm conscious of the time, so I think I'm not gonna run through this, but if you had, say, an Alteryx file that you wanted to convert to a Matillion pipeline, Maia can do that. Maia can also look at the contents of that Alteryx file and to your point, Liam, deduce the business logic and build its own context file from that kind of input, or really any kind of other input. You could give it a PDF, you could give it a Word document that had those standards in it, and then Maia could generate a context file for those or from those sources.
Which, on top of that, going back to the last question, it definitely supports complexity, but in this case could also reduce complexity. So you can use Maia to help improve your setup quickly and very easily, because I know that's a daunting task.
Agreed. That's one of the things we've seen. Even I didn't mention Alteryx. We even have our own legacy platform, which is sometimes the way to do it in the new world. Same outcome, but there's a much better way to do it. So modernizing those legacy pipelines is also kind of part and parcel to what Maia will do.
Definitely.
last one, if you could cover troubleshooting, because I think that's another interesting one. Like the part that's blown my mind since joining is the different ways you can utilize Maya to kind of unstick you when you're in a bind.
Sure. This is one of the interfaces that we have for just listing activity, and I've filtered here for failed pipelines. So if I took that off, you'd see a lot more successful pipeline runs. But I'm just filtering now for the ones that have failed. This one is one of my colleagues, Angus, had a pipeline that ran, and Maya is taking a look at the logging error, and it's saying, hey, this Salesforce incremental load task did not stage any rows. And so there's a post-processing error that indicates basically an empty variable. And you could click on read more, and that will bring up a summary of the issue and go into enormous detail about how to address that problem. And so what we see is that rather than the business going to our data engineers and bothering them about, hey, how come this pipeline didn't succeed? Maya is able to sort of first of all, take that load off of the data engineering team, but also enable the data scientists and the data analysts to surpass some of these errors, issues. Data engineering connects to so many different systems and sources that troubleshooting them can be incredibly complex. And so Maya can diagnose those issues very quickly and just basically take roadblocks out of the way for everyone. So yeah, it's an incredibly powerful feature.
I would say, and this is kind of that like trusting a virtual team thing that I think the industry took a little while from 2023 at the kind of beginning of Gen AI till now to actually like fully embrace. But this is like the beginning of true agentic work, which is the kind of trusting and trust but verify insights derived from these foundational models. And I think that's where the acceleration really shows.
That's 100% true. And there's a million other features that we haven't been able to cover in the time that we have, but like we have a pipeline validation agent. It will basically say, hey, do all of the pipelines in your project follow the pipeline standards that we've built out? This error diagnosis, this root cause analysis falls along the same lines, but we also have things like auto documentation that we haven't been able to get into, where you could basically ask Maya to give you a summary of as either a comment in a pipeline itself, or in it could create a markdown file that went into enormous depth on how that pipeline works. It can generate those git commit messages. I think I mentioned that earlier, but that saves an enormous amount of time. You have to think about, what did I do to change this pipeline, and what are the things that I need to document? Click a button and Maya will generate that summary for you, on top of being able to commit code and push code. So
one of my favorite customer comments was, I'm never writing another commit statement again.
Me neither.
Really.
Yeah, it's
Didn't know you needed, and now I can't live without.
Right.
But it's good to remember that this applies to everyone in the company, or everyone that you're giving access to. It's, again, you don't even have to know the technical words to be able to get what you need. Anyone can do all of the things that we've talked about, which is, I think, a huge win of just removing things from certain teams' plates. And I think it all goes back to the trust in your data. If everyone can see exactly what's happening, they're going to trust it. Or if they can get in themselves, and seeing is believing. If they can talk to Maya, they start to trust the data. And that's step one, is you have to trust it to be able to do anything with it.
You're making the case for data engineering democratization. That's really what it's about, is getting not just more people, but more agents involved in that activity. And so, yeah, spot on.
There is another question, and I know we're tight on time, so we want to give one more question, then probably wrap up as well. If anyone has any additional questions, drop them in now so we can get to them. But the question is around: Can users track lineage and/or dependencies between different parts of the pipeline in the UI?
Yes. So we do have lineage tools that are baked into the platform, so you can see where the data came from and went to.
Mm-hmm. And exactly what's happening between that.
Awesome. And we're about to land the plane on time, which is shocking. So any additional questions, get them in. But yeah, a couple of things I want to mention is one, we actually run sessions with people who are interested in Maia, where we can actually work with them. The work Dave did with the synthetic data is something we actually use quite heavily to better understand or better like represent a customer data set when we're going into one of these sessions. So definitely reach out. My whole team is here and ready and willing to kind of jump in, get to know your data. And we also have a pretty easy to access trial of Maia, where you can get access to Maia and actually start talking to it almost immediately, ask it to generate a data set or give it your own data. One of the other ones, which I also like, again, you didn't even mention the custom connector capability. Like we're fully out of time, and we're dropping in, like, one of the things I found interesting was that you can just feed it documentation of an API, and Maia will build a connector and start consuming and sampling data from literally any API that it can access. I've done some pretty cool things with that. So
such a time saver. I love that. But I think there was a little pop-up at the beginning of this. It said to book a Maia session. That's how you would get a tailored similar presentation to what David already did, but specific to you, and go from there. Oh, there it goes. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Definitely reach out if you have any questions. Whole team is here excited to help. So
awesome. Well, excellent presentation, guys. Really enjoyed it. And thank you again for all that information. And to the audience, again, if you have any questions that weren't answered, or if you wanted to book a more in-depth demo, click that call to action below to book a Maia session and check out more about Matillion and Maia. So I want to thank all of you for joining us here today. Thank you to all of our speakers for an excellent session and presentation. If you missed any of the webinar or want to rewatch anything, you can view it again by just refreshing this URL right after the webinar ends, or it'll be on our YouTube channel tomorrow. And I want to say a special thank you again to our partners at Matillion for making this webinar possible. We'll see all of you again next time. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.